Okay. All right, you ready? Okay. Here we go. All right. Okay. Good afternoon. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Thomas Mitchell, and I'm a trustee for the village of Tarrytown. I would like to welcome everyone here today to the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad Byway public meeting, hosted by the Underground Consortium Railroad Consortium of New York State. For perspective, I think back when I was in elementary school, reading in the textbook that had about 2 paragraphs of Black history relating to enslaved African Americans, my ancestors, and about 2 sentences about Harriet Tubman. Fast forward to my college years, when I took a Black history course that opened my eyes to the inhumane practice of enslavement and the unjust treatment of enslaved people, as well as the fearlessness of Harriet Tubman and the accomplishments of African Americans in terms of their achievements and inventions despite maltreatment. While taking that course, I also realized that history of Harriet Tubman's Underground Railroad journey was right in my own backyard. It was mind-boggling that I was not taught this in my formative years. This brings us here today. Documenting Harriet Tubman's journey is more than justified. Unlike any other American hero, we need to properly honor her and her journey to freedom. The state of Maryland has already completed its byway, and New York State must step up to complete its byway as well. To date, 90 resolutions have passed, 20 resolutions are pending submission, and 102 are needed to pass. So now, I'd like to introduce Danielle Lewis-Jones and Sage Hamilton Hezerika. Did I get it right? The New York State Underground Railroad Corridor Coordinators. They will lead the public meeting. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. It is an absolute thrill to be doing this kind of work a little closer to my hometown. My name is Sage Hamilton Hazarka. I am from Brooklyn, New York. I work as a corridor coordinator for the Underground Railroad Consortium of New York State. It's a 501c3 nonprofit representing Underground Railroad and abolition history by way of the work we do with a number of different historic sites and organizations up and down and right and left, east, west, all over the state. And it's a big undertaking because it's a heavy history, but also a history that has a lot of hope and inspiration for us all. So within the Underground Railroad Consortium, we have these heritage sites. We also have entire museums represented by Ali Spagar-Jagan here, our the president of our board of directors, and Saladin Allah over there, who also works with the Niagara Falls National Heritage Area. But we also work with smaller groups like the Mid-Hudson Anti-Slavery History Project that have little to no staff and are just doing the work out of the love of the history. So we're glad to be able to partner together to work on projects like this with the help of our fantastic heritage consultants at Hargrove International, Danielle Lewis-Jones and Cheryl Hargrove, who thankfully are here to walk us through the process and outline for you all how far we've come with our corridor management plan. We also work with state agencies and tourism entities as represented by our wonderful hosts here today. So thank you to Tarrytown trustee Mitchell and administrator, is it Slingerland? Yeah. Fantastic. And then also we have representatives from the tourism industry, Karen Poole, who's one of the people who initially encouraged our organization to apply for grant funding to start this process. Karen Poole represents Cayuga County, which is where Auburn, New York is located, aka the chosen hometown of Harriet Tubman after his Civil War service. So we all come together to highlight these stories. We're thrilled to be here to listen to the stories that are included in this part of what hopefully may become a part of the eventual route, but we'll talk more about that later. I will give the floor to Danielle Lewis-Jones. Thank you all again for being here. Wonderful to see you and meet you.
Thanks, everyone. As Sage said, my name is Danielle Lewis-Jones, one of the consultants working on the proposed Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad Byway in New York State. I am a member or a part of Hargrove International. This is Cheryl Hargrove, as Sage mentioned. She's been involved in the designation of many byways, both at the state, local level, and national level. So we're very proud to be here and be a part of the New York process. So. Okay, so some of you may have agendas as to what we are doing here today and how the meeting will flow. And so we will go over the purpose of the meeting. Then we'll discuss the review of the byway concept, since this is really our first time being here in Tarrytown. However, so we will go over the byway concept, and then we will present to you the components of the corridor management plan, or CMP. As you know, in many government agencies, as well as in tourism, there are a lot of acronyms. So please be patient with me. I will try to break it down and use the correct terminology, but just give me grace if I happen to say CMP or PEDS instead of Underground Railroad Consortium of New York State, et cetera. So, and then we will have a facilitated discussion, a call to action, and then adjournment. Okay? So, review of a byway concept. Last year, we had 8 public meetings between April and June of last year, going along the proposed route to get input from various communities, but also to introduce and educate as to what a byway is. So New York actually has several byways that you may not have known. When you see the signs like the Revolutionary Byway, that's one of the byways. And so this one, as we know from the name, will be in honor of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad stops that are here. Some of the Underground Railroad stops that are here in New York State. So what is a byway? A New York State byway is a community initiated corridor that has statewide or regional significance. It's representative of a region's either what they call for the New York State DOT intrinsic qualities, which can either be historic, recreational, like the Erie Canal, cultural, like I believe the Maple Trail that's here, as well as natural, historic, archaeological, and scenic. And so it has a dual focus of preservation, but also economic development. And so when we talk about the economic impact of scenic byways, we have some data here of byways that are similar either in topic, theme, or length in historic scope. So as you see here, the Maryland Byway, which of course our goal is to actually connect to the Maryland one. New Jersey is working on their byway, Pennsylvania, Delaware is part of the Maryland one, and then Maryland. And so eventually the goal for this particular byway is to connect and do a multi-state byway, but the first thing that has to happen is state designation. So we are very aware again of the historic nature of it. And also that people and that freedom seekers went into Canada. So eventually, once we get state designation, then once we get national designation, then we will go for international. So that's come up in several meetings. So I just wanted to clarify that first. But so in Maryland's Harriet Tubman Byway, which is 223 miles. As you can see, the amount of visitors that it brings each year, a lot of economic development and contributing $23 million annually in sales. With 363 jobs. And then the Natchez Trace Parkway, which is 444 miles. Originally, as Sage slightly touched on, the overall byway was going to be 550 miles, which we are still aspiring to, which would go border to border. So Niagara Falls all the way to through the Lincoln Tunnel and connecting to New Jersey. So this is the reason why we chose this as a comp, because that is the proposed impact that we see this having if that we hope that this will have. So $18.4 billion to the region, 318,000 jobs nationally, with 271,000 of those being within the neighboring communities that are affected by the Byway. Okay. So, and then of course, the journey through hallowed ground, $1.06 billion in total business sales and 6,500 jobs. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that most communities would love to see that kind of economic impact. And so these are the documented impacts that byways can have in various communities and why so many people would love to have them in their backyard or going through their community. And so the Harriet Tubman New York State Byway then is an initiative of URBNs, or the Underground Railroad Consortium of New York State, that will connect sites related to Harriet Tubman, the Underground Railroad, and freedom seekers throughout New York State. The primary intrinsic quality, which we just discussed, there were 6 of them, will be historic because it's about history and a historic figure. And so the themes will match those of the Maryland Byway, which is faith, family, freedom, and community. Okay. So the image that we have here is actually the New York State Byway process. Each state has a different designation process. And as you can see, there are a lot of different steps there. You may not be able to see the second one, but one of my favorite parts about the New York State is that the second step is beginning public outreach, because this is your byway. This impacts your community, and so, or will impact your community. So in the communities that the byways will go through. And so public outreach and stakeholder engagement has been instrumental throughout the whole entire process, which is the reason why we are holding the public meetings. Okay. And so currently, where you see the circle, we are in the process of developing the corridor management plan. And so as part of the designation process, there are many different steps. 1, you have public engagement. 2, you end up formulating the corridor management plan. You get additional public engagement. Then you submit those documents to New York State DOT, who has a scenic byway advisory board. Then they will either accept or reject. Obviously, we're hoping it will be accepted. And then from there, it has to be designated at the state level and introduced as a bill in your legislature and in your Senate. And then it'll be ratified as a New York State byway. That's the official part of it. And one of the key components of that is that every single jurisdiction that the byway goes through has to have approval at all layers. So whether it's the city, if you are located in a city, a town, and a county, all 3 of those have to approve it, ratify it, have it notarized, so that we then can submit it to the DOT for approval, saying that the communities are for this and the communities in perpetuity want this byway. So no matter the regime change, in perpetuity, it is a notarized copy saying that this particular jurisdiction is for this byway going through it. Okay, so with that, those are a lot of things that have to happen in order for a byway to get this. Okay, so does everyone kind of understand the process there? Yes, it's very detailed, but we love that. So all I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Okay, so what is a corridor management plan? So a corridor management plan is a strategic plan that's used to preserve, enhance, and promote the byway while balancing use and conservation. And so think of it as this 10-year strategic plan that you use to achieve designation, get funding. It goes towards byway development, as well as it helps with marketing and promotion, the stewardship, partnership, and community engagement. So I like to say, think of it almost as a business plan, that when you go to a bank and say, please, give me a loan, you have to have a business plan to say, how are you going to make this successful? Who all is going to be involved? How is this going to happen? Same thing with a strategic plan. And again, this is not temporary. This is for the next 10 years. And what normally happens is that after those 10 years, then another CMP is done. because we know how much change can happen in 10 years, right? So it is a living document, but when you're thinking about the strategic plan and what goes into it, there's a lot that goes into it because you are seeking approval from the DOT to have this designated. Okay, and that you're approving, we will take care of this. We as a community want this, and we will steward it, we will take care of it. So please designate it. Okay, there are a lot of moving parts to it. Cheryl loves to say, loves to compare it also to a car pistons and an engine, to where, you know, once different parts happen, you still have to work on other parts. So it's never something to where you can just say, okay, yay, I support it and give verbiage to it. It is something that needs action. And the action being that it's community driven, which is why the second step is getting community involved. So project overview to date. In 2023, ERCMES obtained a New York State EDA Economic Development Agency tourism grant to develop this and start this process and get the CMP created. So internal meetings then were had to plan and strategize, because as you can imagine, what do you want this to look like? You want this to go through the entire state. So how then do we want it to be slightly different than others? Maryland has a scenic byway. Can we tell the unique story of New York? So these are some of the things that happen within the internal meetings. In 2024, as you can imagine, going from border to border, someone had to lay out the route. What would that look like? How do you decide to go? Are we going? Because we received a lot of questions. Well, is this going the exact route that Harriet took? Not necessarily. We know that there were many different routes that freedom seekers did, where it was north to south, east to west, in order to obtain their freedom. And so a route was developed connecting various sites that are connected to Harriet, Tubman, and the Underground Railroad, but also taking into account other historic sites that were along the way as well. So as I mentioned previously, between April and June, public meetings were held. We had 8 public meetings along the proposed route to introduce what a byway was and to get public feedback, as well as distribute community surveys electronically to those that were in attendance. From there, we generated various corridor management plan components based on the community's input. And so later in the presentation, you will see the byway goals and objectives that we will present to you. And these are based on what the community said that they wanted to see. Okay, as well as Karen. Yes, she's Arvana. And so this is draft 2, as you can see, draft 2 of the corridor management plan. There will be a draft 3 once you guys say, once you look through it and give your public comment. We'll have it on our website for you to go through it as well. There will be many drafts. This is now an 80-page document. We anticipate that it's going to be over 100 pages. So as you can see, lots of stuff for you to look through briefly, but we also will have it online. So what we are doing now then is we've drafted the corridor management plan components, but we're also collecting letters of support and resolutions of support. So remember when I said that at each level, there has to be approval, each government level that in the community that the group goes through, there has to be approval. Those are the resolutions of support. So even if, for instance, when we get to like Bronx County, it only goes through 3 miles of Bronx County. 3 miles. But the whole entire county has to say, okay, well, has to approve it. Even if it goes through a small portion, the city may approve it, but we know in government sometimes that there can be hierarchy and that some things may override. So in order for that to not happen, then that's why we need the resolutions of support from every entity, so that 20 years down the line, whoever may be in charge can't say, well, we don't want to do this anymore. DOT can say, well, you've already said that you were gonna do this and committed to this. So, and this was notarized, and so we have that information. Give me just one moment, sir, and we have discussion in a little bit. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. And so, so hold that thought. So, and you also have note cards here, and so you can write it down in case, because I will forget questions, so I just assume that everyone is similar to me. So resolutions of support, and then also letters of support through citizens and civic groups and so forth who are in support of the byway to say, okay, this is something that we want in our community. Those are also things that we submit to DOT to prove this is something that the community says that they want. It's not just word of mouth for us or lip service for us. This is the proof of it. We have the signatures. So here we are in public engagement, holding public meetings, obtaining the feedback from you guys, and then collecting the letters of support and commitment for participation post designation. So that's why we are here. Also because Mr. Mitchell, sorry, is it? Mr. What is your, okay, well, the trustee, and I meant your title, I'm sorry, besides Mr. Trustee Mitchell was so instrumental in helping get, helping to push in certain areas here locally, and so as he mentioned, so what we wanted to do was talk to the people at Tarrytown, because we still have work to do. Here, specifically in Westchester County, it has not been approved yet. Okay, so, but that doesn't negate the work that he's done to try to help that. So now it's also up to all of us in this room to help with that as well. Okay, so key components of a corridor management plan. So when we're talking about resources and resources interpretation, we are not talking about natural resources like water and so forth. According to DOT, and because this is a historic byway designation, we have to have proof saying that Harriet, Tubman, and the Underground Railroad has significance in this specific area. Otherwise, it would go other, why is the route going through this community and it has no connection to either one? So we have to then submit a list of sites saying these are the places that that are associated with Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. And those are the resources that we're talking about. So there has to be a site inventory that we submit of everything that has an association with those two things for DOT to say, okay, then yes, this has historical significance and we understand why you're going this way and not another way. Okay, stewardship plan, who's gonna take care of it, right? So the stewardship plan is saying in 10 years, this is what it will look like. This is how we're going to maintain the quality of it and so forth. Marketing and promotion plan, how are we gonna make sure that people come? As Trustee Mitchell said, he grew up here and didn't really necessarily know all the history that was here locally. There are a lot of residents of New York State that had absolutely no idea the connection to Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad here. But the marketing and promotion plan will help not just residents and domestic visitors, but also international. So that is part of it. A tourism plan. How are we going to host all these people? And then public participation plan. How are you going to make sure that the public's voice and community's voices are still being heard throughout the 10 years to say, okay, this is how we want to engage in the byway. This is how it's affecting us. And these are the things that we are loving to see, et cetera. So the public engagement and participation plan is also a part of it. Traffic and safety. We heard about the traffic that can go here. 9G, correct? Not Route 9. My apologies. We've been on 9G, we've been on 9, there's been a lot of 9, so my apologies for that. But traffic and safety, so at least know that that is a consideration. Signage, wayfinding, how do we make sure that people don't get lost and that it doesn't overlap on some other things? And then, of course, who's paying for it? So the financial resources, how then will the Byway organization and so forth be funded? How are we going to have funds to do different things across the Byway and for the marketing and promotion, et cetera? So all of these are a part of a corridor management plan. So when we talk about a strategic plan or a business plan, then it helps to see all the different areas that have to be addressed for DOT to say, okay, then the community is really ready to host this and to have this for the next 10 years. Okay? I'm still gonna get to your question. I haven't forgotten about you. So key corridor management plan concepts. So the project vision is sharing authentic stories of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad and freedom seekers in New York. So it's meant to be a vehicle for education, preservation, and economic growth. To enhance community pride as well as quality of life and preserve the historic and natural assets. So that is the project vision. And as you can see, along the eventual 550 mile route. So right now, trustee Mitchell said 90. We did get one more since since your last update. So as of Friday, again, these are coming in. So as we speak, and there's a counter on our website because we are hoping to get some more before we have to turn this in. But we have to have a cutoff time because this needs to go and be submitted to DOT so that then it can be submitted at the state legislative level in January. And so we're backing it up. So 91 resolutions of support received from towns, counties, or municipalities. And in total, almost half, 244.02, because we want every little bit to count, of the original proposed 550 have demonstrated support for the Harriet Tubman Byway going through their communities. In community support, we've received 92 letters of support from citizens, churches, towns, elected officials, and tourism entities. And so some of our principal partners have been the Niagara Falls National Heritage Area, IRCNES, NAACP, and NYSTIA. NYSTIA stands for the New York State Tourism Industry Association. So a lot of tourism bureaus have really been instrumental in helping to get the resolutions of support passed in their areas, saying, hey, we know what byways can do. And so we need our counties and municipalities and so forth to support this going through. So we're very thankful for the support that we've received. And so when we talk about the proposed byway, when I said the eventual 550 that we received 244.02, we, in order to not lose momentum and to acknowledge the people and areas that have said, yes, we definitely want this to go through, we've decided to do 9 segments in round 1, and then and break it into different rounds for the 9 segments instead of it being one contiguous 550 route, because we didn't get approval from everyone, for example, Westchester. So we couldn't do it. So we have, these are the 9 counties, these are the 9 segments, and Cheryl is going to go through them in more detail as we go through the map.
So one of the things, and I'd like to just pause a moment, and you have a question.
No, you kind of answered my question because in 2024, you did surveys
Right.
and the previous screen with the approvals and all that, is that a result from 2024?
The sum of it, yes.
Yeah.
And then also some of the comments that were made really were the foundation for the draft plan that is being circulated. And then we have worked on with more committees and others to provide additional information so that we could really do a good marketing plan that would last for 10 years, a good tourism development plan, all of those components that Daniel mentioned, which we'll talk more about today.
And you have 9, you have 9
We have 9 segments.
segments. Now, what about Westchester County?
Well, so that's what I'm going to talk about now is that Westchester County has not passed a resolution of support yet.
The county.
The county. Now, I will tell you though, that we do have resolutions from Tarrytown, we've got it from Irvington, we've got Hastings on Hudson, we have received it from Croton on Hudson. We have Ossining Town, not the village. We have a resolution from the village of Sleepy Hollow, the town of Portland, the town of Mount Pleasant. And this is as of Friday, so we're trying to stay as current as possible. The village of Yonkers, we just need, their signed, resolution, and we know it's passed, we just don't have it physically in hand. And then the village of Peekskill. So those are the things, so we've got the foundation, it's just that we can't move forward with a designation for the county or those segments until the county has adopted, and resolved or passed a resolution.
But we'll take it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And if you can do it the next week, that would be even better. So, well, one of the reasons, I mean, we recognize this is a heavy lift, it takes a lot of time, I've worked with Byways a lot, and sometimes it takes, years, but there is a precedent in BOT to accept a byway in segments. We felt it was important to recognize all those jurisdictions who have passed in total as much as we can, so that we can start working on that implementation and help maybe move the others along a little bit once they see things are happening.
I have one last
Yes,
question.
yes, sir.
One last question, if you have a time limit on all this, on moving forward?
Yes, we
Okay,
do.
so Westchester does not approve. You just start up north?
No, actually, we won't. I will show you in a minute. We'll go with, and what I will say is that this will be in how we're going to recast the corridor management plan, is that this is gonna be phase one designation. And we're hoping that, while phase one is getting started and everything is traction, then phase two can come along as well and complete the rest of it, so that it's not. And it could actually be a phase three if we don't get all of them, so that the momentum continues rather than waiting until all 550 miles is designated. So if I can have the first slide, this is actually just the counties you see, keep going. So one of our first routes is the Bronx, and as Daniel mentioned, it's on 9A. And so it's just 3.25 miles, but the county as well as the community has designated, so we are going forward with that as a first segment. So even though we're not going to have the connector for New York County has not yet signed or passed the resolution, although some of the community boards have. We would have the first segment starting in the Bronx. Then the second would be actually the city of Hudson. Now, Columbia County has passed the whole byway segment, but some of the jurisdictions have not, which means that we can't connect the outliers on either side, and so we're just going with the city of Hudson. So that would be the current segment that represents the Hudson Valley for now, unless something else happens. And I know that Dorchester or Dutchess County is working very hard, and so I know that we've got some other traction. So that would be that. Then going east to west, we would have Montgomery County. Montgomery County is for the entire route there. I should draw your attention to the part in red. That is the town of Glenn. Glenn decided they did not want to participate, so we had to reroute. And rather than go on 5 south, we are going on 5, which is part of the Revolutionary War Byway. And that's not unusual, but you have to then, that's where, when we get places that say no, we have to do workarounds. So next segment is Madison County. This goes actually where Garrett Smith National Historic Landmark is in Peterborough. One of the foundational components that we looked at were the National Park Service here, travel with Tubman sites and mapped those first. And then also included the Network to Freedom sites that are recognized by the National Park Service as contributing resources. So that was kind of where we started our map route. So this goes, that little dip you see is where Peterborough is. Next one. Then we have the city of Auburn, which we know is the Harriet Tubman's chosen hometown. If you notice that there is red on the left side, those are two jurisdictions in Cayuga County that decided not to participate in this byway. So again, we are just going to go with the city of Auburn and hope that, you know, maybe we can persuade changes in future. But right now, that is a critical component to this byway. And so we're going with Auburn. And this area does include all of the major resources that are related to Harriet Tubman, including the national park. So we've got that. Then we have Seneca County, and again, that red portion is what, and even though Cayuga County, as a county, passed the resolution, again, if you don't get all the layers, we can't count it. So that's where that little red portion is, just to the left of Auburn, Auburn. And then, so this is Seneca County. And so it will go through that portion of Seneca County. Next slide.
We had a question.
I'm sorry.
Mike.
Oh,
Yeah, I noticed you said at some point that you're dotting the i's and crossing the t's so people can't reverse. So are the resolutions, are they reversible?
sure. Yeah, if somebody says no, they can go back and say, well, we did.
And if somebody says yes,
If they say yes, they would have to go through a process, with DOT. So, because it's part then of a designated byway, and it would end up being almost part of, then you would be, declassifying the whole byway with that. So there's,
well, that's encouraging news.
Yeah. yeah, which is one reason why they go through all of this process to make sure that people understand, you know, the significance of the byway, but also that you're investing in a long-term project. And it's not just a marketing program, but that it looks at in totality, the intent and purpose of the byway.
Thank you.
Sure. So this, and I should mention that that red portion should not be red. That is actually Geneva. It is not that they have declined, they just needed an amendment to their, and we have heard that they have done an amendment. We're just awaiting that amendment. So now it will be a continuous route, Ontario and Wayne counties, and then keep going. And then one of our longest routes is the Monroe, Orleans, and Niagara counties that goes through Rochester and then over. And then finally, the little dip is the 9th section, please go ahead, which is Erie and Niagara going down to Buffalo and then back up to Niagara Falls. So as you can see, these are, you know, we don't have as much concentration in the portion that starts in New York County and goes north and Albany, but you know, we hope that that can happen in the future. So this is a time when you can ask questions with regards to the resolution process, or if you have any other questions with regards to the corridor management plan. One of the things that I will say is that Daniel has more information about the corridor management components that we will go through, and we will invite you to give commentary there. I will also say that this presentation will be sent to you along with a link to the updated corridor management plan, hopefully next Monday. I'll be spending my 4th of July weekend working on this, so
Very patriotic.
I'm sorry.
Very patriotic.
Yes, well, you know, it's a labor of love, so, you know, but, so that then you'll have time to be able to respond and provide any commentary. Questions though about where we are in the selection of the 9 segments and the decision to move forward at this point. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about stewardship?
Yes.
Long-term stewardship and sort of what that looks like in terms of, is the nonprofit that's leading this going to continue for the next 10 years?
Certainly. So there is a byway management structure that Danielle will talk about a little bit more. And one of the things that is hopeful is that will include staff and that will have, people who can actually help orchestrate stewardship activities. But stewardship can also happen on a volunteer basis, where part of what we're looking at from these like letters of support is what can, public groups adopt part of the byway? Or can there be cleanup efforts, like how they have Keep America Beautiful programs and things like that. So our stewardship plan includes a lot of those kinds of voluntary stewardship activities. It also though looks at, what is necessary to make sure that the historic and cultural integrity of the route is maintained. So it's looking at, what kind of preservation plans currently exist, and can the byway support those at the local level? Can they support conservation efforts at the local level? And so helping just to do that kind of encouragement to take care of the scenic integrity of the byway itself. So there's different strategies that are in place. And then that will be up to the steering committee and the local committee, the stewardship committee, to actually implement specific activities. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
So my question is kind of related to what was just asked, because I was wondering how much of the key components fall into the municipality, right? Because ultimately, like who's the marketing and all that stuff that you said are key components.
Right.
How much is our municipality, how much is the nonprofit, and how do you manage that moving forward?
Typically, in a byway, it is done by a nonprofit organization and or partners such as tourism bureaus that are taking that on as part of their ongoing responsibility. The municipalities are asked to support what's in the corridor management plan and make sure that they're, working with the organization, working with the volunteer groups to ensure that the byway is cared for, working with DOT, so that if there is signage that needs to be replaced or things like that, that they're giving any kind of permissions that are necessary for that. So there's not any kind of direct obligation, I should say, but there is requested support for the overall intent to realize the vision of the entity. So we're not asking for staff, it's not those kinds of things that are being asked for through support. Yes, ma'am.
So exactly how does, I see you have trails, exactly how does Tarrytown fit in?
Well, right now, you are not. You hopefully will once Westchester County passes a resolution of support, then we can actually include you on that designated byway route, that 550 miles. And then you would be part of the marketing, you would be part of the tourism development, you would be part of the coordinated activities, the resource interpretation, the training that goes on, the storytelling that would be happening, and all of the other elements that are included in the corridor management plan.
You think that Westchester County didn't pass the resolution?
They have not yet.
Oh, no, so it was presented to them?
I don't know the status. Yes, it has been presented to them.
And they voted on it, or they did not, they have not voted on it?
They haven't voted on it yet. They've said that they would take it to the,
Excuse me?
Go ahead, say it.
yeah, I was just gonna say, it's been presented to them and it's been brought to their attention by our various supporters and partners throughout the county. But I believe it's at the committee level after having been presented at a public session.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and every county has different processes and timelines and everything else, and so it's a decision. Yes, sir.
So, from your experience in other byways and how this byway can be envisioned, what are the roles or possible roles for contiguous counties that aren't a segment? Because I come from Nyack, which is in Rockland County. It took me 12 minutes to drive here, so it's closer to some parts of Westchester, and we just dedicated Toni Morrison bench by the road in a park that overlooks Tarrytown. To abolitionist named Cynthia Hestra. So, and then just this Juneteenth, we rededicated it and added more signage. So we have, resources that we think would be relevant to this, but we're not included, but we're contiguous and very close. So are there sites in other byways that are relevant to the topic or relevant to the theme that can somehow be included or play a role?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways that byways do this. The first is we do have 4 themes, so faith, family, freedom, and community. And a lot of times you'll say, well, here's an itinerary, and these are the core places on the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad for this theme. But while you're in the area, go and see these others contributing sites. The whole goal of a byway is to help people linger longer, to get off the interstate, off the parkway, off anything that they're going 90 miles an hour through your community, and missing your community entirely. And we want to get them off and into the community so that they can, spend money, but also be more aware of what your history and culture and your lifeblood is, your stories. So that's where the tourism entity, and I'll let Karen talk more about that, can help as far as saying, well, you're coming for Harriet Tubman. That's that can be the catalyst, that motivator. But while you're here, take advantage of these other activities. They're either, in a neighboring county or whatever. So that, and we actually anticipate, because this is such a large byway, 550 miles, and most people aren't going to travel the whole thing in one go. So they're going to take probably pockets or loop tours. So that's one way. Before you go, there's also, you can do spurs. So that's another way that in a future, entity, you could actually say, we'd like to add on to the Harriet Tubman Byway and have a spur that supports this, project. And New York has byways that have spurs.
If the county, without being officially part of it, passed the resolution saying that we'd be willing to be a spur, is that?
Well, the byway has to get designated first. And then you're added a spur. Probably you could say that you could go to the byway committee and say, we'd like to be a spur. That can be added in the second round or third round.
And a quick follow-up, are there any restrictions to including information about destinations outside of the segments in your marketing? So does.
That's up to the marketing and tourism committee, but not usually.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna speak on. I'm gonna give you a real life example in New York State. So the Cayuga Lake Scenic Byway moved to Cayuga Lake. I represent Cayuga County and the city of Auburn. The city of Auburn is not on the Cayuga Lake Scenic Byway. It is close by, it's about 15 miles away. We promote, while you're in the Cayuga Lake Scenic Byway, come visit Auburn, New York, and get to know Harriet Tubman's chosen hometown. We're not officially in the corridor management plan, but we are partners with it. What we're talking about here, and getting designated, is the official requirements from the Department of Transportation to pass the corridor management plan and designate the byway. What you at neighboring communities do after designation to expand the message, there's nothing against that. No, the byway is designated, it exists in your nearby, you can definitely promote it as being in the vicinity. And like Cheryl said, the intent of the byway program in New York State is to help economic development in rural communities. Right, and to get people off the highway, to get them to spend longer. This huge long byway, it is very unlikely that people are gonna start in the Lincoln Tunnel and go all the way to Niagara Falls. But they'll do it in sections and they'll keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back. So each section can do their own marketing plan, or another example would be Cayuga County. I think we're total in the proposed about 25 miles. But our county is long and skinny, this byway is just cutting through it. I, as executive director of the tourism office, have developed an app, a driving app that takes people through the county up and down. So I promote the app. And while you're in the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad Scenic Byway, get to know all the Underground Railroad sites on here. So there's tons of opportunities like that.
And you are very fortunate here in that you already have a lot of existing well-known and well-respected attractions and historic sites. And so part of the byway's responsibility is to work with those entities So you're not duplicating or competing, but instead you're just lifting everyone. Okay? So, any other, I think somebody else had a question. Yes, ma'am.
I'm from a neighboring town, and we're very supportive. We're one of the, communities that you mentioned that.
Thank you.
Getting approval, but in terms of an inventory, we don't have any underground railroad, that we know of history. So I'm trying to envision what this would be like. I'll say Westchester County approves the whole thing, they will. And there are 3 or 4 underground railroad related sites. We would then help promote those sites in a neighboring community.
Well, and that's a great point. You want to start the goals and objectives. Because I think that this will go especially to the first goal, where we are not just where it's an end state. Part of a 10-year plan is to look at what other places need to be uncovered, what other stories need to be told, where, research that may exist, but maybe there's no physical site. Is that a place for a kiosk or an interpretive marker? So looking at also how you can constantly build on what exists today. And that's where, when you're part of a byway, it is always looking at that growth opportunity to investigate documented stories or learnings that will help enrich. Also be able then to attract people to come back and learn something new. So that is also part of this. As we look at the goals and objectives that are outlining the corridor management plan, it's very much about a baseline, but how do you then grow that baseline, both economically, also interpretively, also as far as stewarding it and making sure that there's a benefit for residents, resources, and visitors. So that it has that 3-legged stool that is so important to make sure that it is a win-win situation. So, I'll let.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Oh, yes, sir.
2.
Okay.
Does I know with some other byways I'm familiar with, the plan will, regulate things along the byway, like signage, billboards, other things. Curious, does that be your plan?
The resolutions of support have to dictate that the jurisdiction will not do any future permitting of OPAS, which is off premise advertising signs, which means billboards. So that is a criteria for the resolution of support by the jurisdiction. And it is a requirement by DOT. It is also a requirement for federal designation. So the Federal Highway Administration requires that. And since the ultimate goal for this byway is to get national designation, we are abiding by what the federal highway requires as well. And so you have to do, we're doing it once rather than having to go back and do it again.
And with that, again, as Cheryl said, future permitting. Every billboard that is there currently, we have had to document so that they can be grandfathered in.
Yeah, and then that permitting will be monitored by the Department of Transportation. So you don't have to, do anything.
And just one more thing, when you say,
Awesome.
the word for me, does that mean that it doesn't cover sign, if you own the property that's your sign, it doesn't impact that? Or-
No, it's, you can do whatever signage you have for your own property on your own premise.
Right,
It is that if you are Joe's Auto Body
right.
and you want to do a billboard on 9, then that would not be permitted in future.
Right.
But what you do at Joe's Auto Body on your own building site
It
is
still remains under local jurisdiction.
absolutely,
Sounds nice.
yes. Yes.
Yeah, I just have clarification. So the resolution for support, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have byway will go through our particular community. We just want support from the municipalities to support the byway to come to through the county field.
The resolution of support is based on the route that we have designated, and it only applies to the route that is designated as far as off-premise advertising. So, you know, if Westchester County passes this, they only have to make sure that there is no off-premise advertising for that particular segment of the byway.
I'm just thinking about, so the municipalities, I work for local municipalities, I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out that.
Yeah, but if it's county, municipal, whatever that is, it's for that route. So can you go back to a minute? Towns, villages, it has to go all the layers. So for instance, in Cayuga County, we have a county jurisdiction, but we don't have all of the local towns and villages. So we could not go in those areas. So for instance, go back, sorry. So, no, sorry. No, go back, that one. So that one there, so that red means that that town did not pass a resolution, which meant that we had to change the route. And which is why it's now going on 5 rather than 5 south, so that it can actually go above there and not be part of an area that is not interested in having the bike.
Right, and go ahead. Well, I was gonna say, as well as, you may be one of the municipalities that we don't know, because you haven't stated exactly. But if you were one of the municipalities. But if you were, but I think that that's, because it is kind of a newer concept, but, you may be one of the municipalities that passed it. But if your county didn't pass it, then you will not be on the route.
And Greenberg did not pass it.
Right, so, but again, when Cheryl says all the layers, it's all the layers. So even if one says no, it negates all of it. So, which means you won't be part of the marketing plan, which means all the different things because we're submitting this in August. We're submitting it in August. And so, August through December, because DOT has their process of reviewing it and so forth, and if we need to make revisions, etc. It's a 4 to 5 month process, because our ultimate goal is for them to say, okay, this is approved and designated, then for it to be submitted in January. And to your legislative body for New York State, through the Senate as well as the Assembly, to say, okay, this is a byway bill. We are going to officially designate this as a New York byway. So Westchester and so forth won't be in that. So, because I don't know if we necessarily have said yet exactly the deadline. Cheryl said that she's gonna be working on July 4th. There's the reason, but which is important, but so we can get this in. So when we're talking about how critical it is, it's very critical, but it may mean that we're hoping that it means that you will be, that it'll happen in round 2. So once this part happens as far as designation, then we have the other cog of maintaining and doing all the things that happen with designation, but then also starting from a certain point to achieve the resolution of support within the areas that didn't happen. Okay?
And then the last question, is one last question. I just want to, and you could probably email me or I can talk to Trustee Thomas. Just know the commitment of the municipalities which you're asking for outside of the letter of support. I just want to be clear on that.
There is a draft letter of resolution on our website.
Okay.
That says specifically what you asked for.
Yes.
Got it. All right.
And has the verbiage for the billboards, et cetera, and off-premise, yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's kind of what I was going to ask for, like, as a citizen who wants to approach the legislators on the different levels, I wanted, it would be helpful to have something to send to them.
We have.
And then you're also gonna be able to provide the quarter management plan if they have any further questions with regards to stewardship, with regards to marketing, with regards to anything else. It's in there.
What's the current poses, so
As I do.
Is it possible, just thinking about, removing barriers to get into the past? I just wonder if it's possible to take the corridor management plan and put it into a 2-pager?
No.
Okay.
We will have the executive summary, right, and I will say that, Danielle talks about being 100 pages, it's probably gonna be 250.
Okay.
Because we have to add, and those are in legislation, we have to add a 1 to 24,000 topographic map. We have to do a scale map for every single connecting route, so there's a lot of detailed parts. And we are evaluated by Department of Transportation on checking all these boxes. We do have what a corridor management plan is. There is also, DOT has a very good document about what a byway is and other things. And so that's where we are.
Trying to you have to cut through sometimes some of the competing agendas, and so to be able to envision what a byway can do for a community, just to break it down into sort of, simple.
We do have a 2-pager that is on the website about why byways are designated and what they do for communities. So I invite you to, look there.
So this young lady in the blue and white has had her hand up, so sorry, I didn't know that you were not sure.
I had a couple questions, so, it's in committee with, Westchester, right now. Do you have a sentence first, how fast it will pass the committee, that you're submitting in August? Once it passes through Westchester legislative, the committees that have already approved it will just become part of, will then go green, and then the subsequent local municipalities in Westchester will have to be approached and approved in order to go green. Is that correct?
A lot of them have already been approved.
Yeah.
So all we're doing is really waiting on the county.
Yeah.
And I saw in the draft that, that the organization that will be moving this forward is a subsidiary of, Niagara. Does that mean the organization will mainly be centered up in that area to deal with this? Or, as it moves forward?
It'll be administered by the Niagara, yes, but we explained that also a little bit later to go into the byway organization, because that's a key concept of the corridor management plan, because right now, IRCMEs and the steering committee and so forth, and internal committees have been handling it. But obviously moving forward, it will need its own entity, and so we do go a little bit into more depth into that.
You would expect.
And then Alan.
You would expect it to pass the Westchester legislature before it's amended.
We have no idea.
No sense, you're gonna.
Yes, sir.
For the question about, municipalities that are outside of the actual corridor where the Route 9 is housed, or any portion of the byway is housed. If it's a county or a municipality that doesn't host Route 9 or that route, do they still have to make the commitment to disallow or not, not allow off-site billboards?
Not if they're not on the actual byway.
Okay.
It's only subject to the byway itself.
Interesting.
We've got enough to deal with 500 people. Yes, ma'am.
How will we go through find out whether the county approved or denied?
We update we have a counter on our website right now, and we have every letter of resolution that's been submitted. We have actually letters of support, because we're hoping that people see, oh, well, so-and-so has offered a letter of support, I'm gonna do one too. We have sample letters of support, we have sample letters of participation, so our website becomes the, it is really the pinnacle for it. We will be making an update, it's probably gonna be Monday, when we provide the corridor management plan draft for public comment. Because that will say, these are the communities we're going with, the segments, the 9 segments, or if there's anything else that has come up, we will add at that time. And it will be articulated in the corridor management plan that this is phase 1. And we're going to have it where we have an advocacy committee that will continue looking at resolutions of support from these other counties to finish up. Yes.
Maybe you guys this would say come with later, but I'm curious how beyond New York State DOT, which is the regulator. How supportive is the state through agencies like I Love New York or Office of Parks, Recreation and Stuff Commission, they have partnered with this and.
Absolutely. We have had incredible support, and I will say, I've worked in probably 30 states for byways. I've also sat on the National Scenic Byways Review Panel. I have never seen a state as involved in this process as DOT has been. You are very fortunate.
Yes.
Usually I never get any, I mean, it's like, you just do it, and when you're ready, we'll let you know. They have been with us every step of the way and given great counsel and great support. So you are very blessed with the DOT that is involved with the City Byways program here.
Just like, so has I Love New York.
So I Love New York
Yeah.
and the partners that have been involved in, you know, in tourism, in the steering committee.
Yeah.
So they've been participating for the last 2 years in the updates and providing commentary and other things. So has the Erie Canalway, Heritage Area, National Heritage Corridor. The NAACP and others have all been, the New York State, Tourism Industry Association, all big partners, at various levels. And so that has been, you know, made this behemoth project much more, possible in the short time frame that we've had.
It's nice to know, right? People get results.
This is a huge undertaking that they've got the local connections.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask her, we did a presentation to the Erie Canal Heritage Corridor for their bicentennial. And we had representatives at the state level from economic development. The governor's husband was in the room and he said, we're in full support of this. The African American Commission was there, so yes, a lot of people at the state level, we were able to present to them. Celine, Sage, Ally, and myself were there. So like Cheryl says, the support at the state level, DEC, New York State Parks and Trails, they've all been part of the conversation.
And everybody is saying, well, how about this? How about this? And I'm like, we gotta get designated for it. So that's where we are. So.
Any other questions? Okay, so. We've already touched on the first goal and objective. There are actually 5 goals. Overarching goals. And so the first, as Cheryl mentioned, was identifying and documenting information about Harriet Tubman, the Underground Railroad, and freedom seekers. So that involves the research, documentation, interpretation, and marketing of the stories of Harriet Tubman, the Underground Railroad, and freedom seekers along the byway. So the objectives, because as we know, it's great to have a goal, but if you don't have an objective and how you're gonna get there, who's gonna own it, who's gonna do the work, and a deadline, then which those will be added in the finalized DOT draft that we submit to them. These are the objectives. So utilizing existing research and continuing to document oral histories, because as we know, a lot of African American history may not have been written down, it was oral. And so documenting those. We've been conducting byway interpretive training along and utilizing technology in various forms, whether it's digital communication, proposing using apps and videos, website, etc., to educate and communicate with residents, visitors, and byway stakeholders. And of course, communicate regularly with, like the young lady asked in the black dress, with corridor residents, communities, and stakeholders. Because how do you find out about what's going on, right? And so that is one of the objectives in it. Then we have goal 2, preserve and share authentic stories and places, preserve and interpret the documented stories and events related to Harriet Tubman, the Underground Railroad, and freedom seekers at both natural and historic sites along the byway. So expand visitor readiness in interpretation of resources. Again, resources are going to be the sites and so forth that document the history and tell the story of what happened here in New York State, using arts. You know, a lot of places have gorgeous murals. Maryland has very beautiful murals talking about Harriet Tubman and so forth and what happened there. And so the utilization of multimedia and art forms in order to express it here. Tour programs so that K through 12, like our lovely lady here, from lifelong learners, school age children to lifelong learners can experience the byway. And learn about the story related to Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. Create and implement a corridor-wide stewardship plan, which we discussed earlier. And then identifying and encouraging strategies for cultural landscapes and historic viewsheds, which of course is to maintain the look of it and make it continue to be scenic. Then developing new authentic experiences. So developing authentic and informative experiences to engage byway users in diverse stories about Harriet Tubman, freedom seekers, and the Underground Railroad here in New York. So again, even in 9 segments, it's 244 miles is a long way. So how do you then divide that in different chunks? Because each region has a different story to tell. So develop regional and thematic interpretive centers and kiosks, which Cheryl touched upon, to break it up for visitor awareness and education. So all of us have traveled and done long road trips before, right? And so we know that occasionally you need to stop somewhere. But how are we communicating that information regarding the byway and other areas that may be there? And so those are some of the things that have been suggested. Again, creating multimodal interpretive programs, because we know that it wasn't just by foot. There were trains that were involved. There were waterways that they traveled in order to seek freedom. And of course, you guys, the primary intrinsic quality that we are going for, as we mentioned, is historic. But at the national level, you have to have 2. And so the second one is recreational, because you have the Erie Canal and because you have so many different recreational waterways there. Bicycle visitors and so forth will interact with the byway. And so having that as part of one of the goals and objectives. And then conducting training to expand local education for residents and for people that are visiting. And one of the key things that we heard throughout our public meetings was making sure that African American voices were not overshadowed by other voices. And so having African American voices since it's American history that deal with ancestors and so forth, but encouraging the collaboration with African American communities along the byway and the visibility of Black-owned businesses. And so one of the other comments that we heard was, well, this particular byway doesn't necessarily go through the Black community in our location or in our town. And so, as we know, community demographics change. And so what we wanted to do was use verbiage that would reflect, because again, it may look very different. What a community looks like right now may look very different in 10 years. And so having the verbiage to say that this is something that is at the forefront of what the community said that it wanted. And so putting this verbiage in here to where no matter what a particular community along the byway looks like, that is still going to elevate African American communities and prioritize.
And if I could just
And Black
inject
businesses.
inject, one of the things that usually a tourism site or an app has, if you're looking for a restaurant, here are some restaurants you might want to frequent, or if you're looking for overnight accommodations, here's some places to look at. So those are the kinds of things that will be highlighted in the tourism marketing, and also be a way to help support the goals of the byway through these recommendations.
And so goal number 4 is marketing. Excuse me, marketing the byway to attract visitors and their spending to communities, as Cheryl touched on, to get them to linger longer. How are we going to get them to have an overnight and to stay here longer along businesses along the route for increased annual economic impact and positive brand recognition? So creative marketing tools, as Karen mentioned, and then developing and marketing adult school groups adult programs, but also school group tour programs to attract people to the byway, whether it's local New York residents, or people that are domestic travelers or international travelers who may be in a group. Collaborating with other organizations and governmental agencies to promote the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad in New York experience. And then again, ensuring African American communities and businesses are represented and elevated in product development, interpretation, and marketing to generate economic benefits, as Cheryl mentioned, with promoting different Black businesses and so forth as part of it. And goal number 5 is to cultivate and maintain diverse and inclusive byway leadership to identify, resources, implement, oversee, and evaluate the impact of the CMP, corridor management plan. So implementation of a byway management structure, which we discussed a little bit earlier, and the organization that's going to be to spearhead this, to engage stakeholders, including descendants and relatives of freedom seekers and Harriet Tubman. We have a descendants council who helps to oversee, and that's led by Saladin Allah, who is not his daughter Anusha, but Saladin. You can take a bow. And so who is headed with Saladin, if you wouldn't mind speaking about it, but it's headed by Saladin Allah, who is a descendant of Josiah Henson, the subject of Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin. So would you like to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, one thing I think about as being an actual descendant is many people may not care about Harriet Tubman or any of our ancestors, but they may care about the economic value of a scenic byway. How many people have been to Niagara Falls before? If you put in your phone right now, in Google Maps, a journey to get to Niagara Falls, it's gonna take you on the fastest route along the place. We're actually creating a byway or an alternative route that allows you to actually go through communities and see important historic sites, communities, and businesses of our people, and making sure that they're central along this route. So, as a member of this Descendants Council, I'm connected with different people across the state who are actual descendants of the people who this route honors. And it's important that we remain central to this whole project and process, because it's only gonna be a matter of time before we have people who would like to commandeer something like this because they see the economic value of it. And we don't want it 10 years from now, 50 years from now, to look nothing like what we created from the foundation. And that's also important why we wanted community engagement. When you see projects like this, they're oftentimes built from the top down. Where you have people who are so intelligent that they just gonna build it and people are gonna come. And they never involve the community at all. All of this is a grassroots effort. And many of the people who have worked on this project are doing this voluntarily. And that's what we're asking for your support as well. You know, getting some resolutions passed and letters of support and participation in these areas. You are the people who are on the ground. You know the people you need to talk to. And that is one of the ways that we've gotten this support to get these resolutions and things passed along this byway. Passing this byway within segments is also going to create leverage for some of these communities that don't understand the value of not only just history and heritage, but the economic value of it. Because in these areas, tourists and other different organizations already document the economic impact of people who are coming from communities. They do that every year. The more that we're able to document that there is an increase in traffic of people traveling the scenic byway, then that is also encouraging for some of these municipalities that may have this let's wait and see attitude about the importance of this. So the product is actually an experience. That's what we're creating the scenic byway. So kind of look at it as like a main artery going through the body of New York State. And as a main artery, you have veins that are connected. These are communities that are connected to this main artery. So some of those communities that may not be on that main artery, they're connected to it. And people are going to drive off of this main artery, and we wanted to make sure that there's going to be experiences that people are able to enjoy, like what we've been saying, to stay a couple more days in different areas, and not just stay there and just patronize any businesses, but patronize those type of businesses that align with the vision of what this scenic byway is about. And that's also why it's important to make sure that we create somewhat of a green book motorist type of approach towards when people go to different areas, like for myself, when we travel places. I want to know the businesses that I can patronize, you know, where the local family businesses or where the different places that I can buy certain products at. And that is all going to be a part of this project. So I'm just thankful for all of you showing up today and having an interest of not just supporting this, but also participating in this project because we need you to be a part of this.
Thank you, Saladin. And so as we talk about sustaining and growing the byway, of course, the second objective is how do you fund it? Because as we're seeing now, you know, in real time, organizations that only have one funding model or one funding source, if you lose that, then all of your eggs are in one basket, and then what do you do? And so making sure that there are diverse funding sources to where the byway will be able to do everything that it needs to do and that we've put in the corridor management plan. Fostering leadership opportunities among people of African descent and youth to facilitate the byway's growth, diversity, and sustainability. And then collaborating with organizations and agencies to leverage resources because it's all about collaboration. And then documenting, as Saladin touched on, analyzing and communicating the impact of the byway to stakeholders, residents, and funders with the lens on how it's on African American communities and businesses on and near the byway. Again, for some people, for some governmental agencies, and for some people are just all about the numbers. It's great to say, oh, well, I think that I feel that I had increased foot traffic. Well, we've seen this particular amount of growth in your area. So when we talked about the numbers before and the economic impact, when you can document billions of dollars, it's very hard to say that you don't support something when your community may need that. I don't know any community that is turning down $1 billion something worth of revenue. I mean, we have elected officials here. Do you know of anyone? No. Not even New York City is turning down $1 billion worth of revenue, right? So those are some of the things and the importance of documenting and analyzing and communicating. Because even again, if you've earned that, then being able to communicate it to say, hey, this is who we are and this is what we've done, and being able to give verbiage and to that gives it also credence. So when we talk about the byway organizational structure, which the young lady mentioned that she saw in the draft corridor management plan, upon designation, there in phase one, it will be created, the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad New York Byway Organization, who will take over the governance and the implementation of everything. It is a subsidiary of the Niagara Falls National Heritage Area. As Cheryl mentioned, staff on loan and volunteer leadership with the steering committee, who will make executive decisions, the Descendants Council, which we just heard from Saladin, and then the various committees such as tourism, interpretation, marketing, stewardship, and advocacy. And then in phase two, because we're hoping again that we will have secured enough funding sources to hire staff, executive director, and people for development for continual fundraising, but also by that time, we're also hoping that the whole entire border to border route will be designated. And so at that time, we will also need regional representatives to say, okay, this is what my community needs, because Niagara may not have the same needs as Hudson and the same needs here as in other areas. So, Allie, would you like to address the question about Niagara Falls National Heritage Area and whether it would be located there?
Yeah, so just to kind of touch on that a little bit further. So the Niagara Falls National Heritage Area is one of the 65 national heritage areas in the United States. We're through the National Park Service. I work along with Sally, we both do. We work directly for Niagara Falls National Heritage Area. In my role with the Underground Railroad Consortium of New York State, I'm a volunteer. I serve as the president, so all the many hats, as I'm sure many of you also do in your worlds as well. So the reason this came about, so just to backtrack a little bit, the sponsoring organization again is the Underground Railroad Consortium of New York State. It's a statewide organization. It does not have any paid employees. This project, the grant that we have is funded, and who you see, in this room, who is paid, to be able to bring it forward, but it is not a long-term funding source for staff and business. Also, the Underground Railroad Consortium has many different objectives, part of their mission and work, and it's much more historic based with a little tinge of tourism, but not quite to the level that the Byway care is going to need going forward. And so through a lot of different discussions and different scenarios and planning, collectively, we came, to the agreement and through the process to understand that national heritage area, which is like the Byway in that it represents a whole area. Not just one, building or one project or things or one program. And so the national heritage areas understand the needs of a byway because they work in very similar functions. The Niagara Falls National Heritage Area is 15 miles in length, which is one of the smaller ones. But what the goal is to transfer the management from the Underground Railroad Consortium, all volunteer, over to Niagara Falls National Heritage Area. So the Niagara Falls National Heritage Area, I will try to talk about it. The Niagara Falls National Heritage Area has a team of staff and consultants. It has accounting, has legal services, and all of that can be shared amongst the byway coming online. Additionally, what the plan would be to go forward is also about work in an MOU partnership with Erie River as well as national heritage areas in New York State. So it's actually uniting management structure in the future, once we can get to that point, a couple years down the road, and bringing, everybody online together. And so that, to answer your question from earlier, it will initially start out of Niagara Falls from a physical sense. But we also, we move around the state, and then as we grow in terms of actual staff capacity, not just leveraging the resources that the Niagara Falls National Heritage Area already has. Because when we come online as designation, we won't have those funding streams yet necessarily in place, they have to be developed. So that's kind of the next phase for management side, is that we have to go out and get those funds to hire the staff. And then build that at those MOUs and then longer term partnerships with other national heritage areas, making it really a statewide, very strong management structure in that sense. So I hope.
Yes.
What was that? Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And so, what are the needs of our public meeting locations? Only Buffalo, Auburn, and Rochester have approved. Obviously, a lot of the municipalities here have Tarrytown and several others that Cheryl mentioned earlier. But as we've said several times, and we won't, beat a dead horse, Westchester County has not. So what do we need? You need to make your voices heard. There is a short window because, as you heard, we are submitting this in August. And so letters of support are needed from you, but also a pledge of support for implementation once it's designated. But you guys have to get the resolution of support first. So what does that mean? While for some, we know that Westchester County is already familiar with it, but we don't know exactly where that is yet. So it may mean going grassroots, contacting, an email may not be enough. It may not mean that a letter to your he's already done it, but your officials may be enough. Ally has been amazing as an example of showing up to meetings to say, hey, you said this was gonna be on the agenda. It's not on the agenda. In the public comments and section, and I know this gentleman here is saying, look, we're gonna take care of that. So that is what is needed. So especially with it being recorded, right? So, but we need to verbalize it and say to the people who are in charge and have the decision-making power to say, this is what we want to see. We know that you know about it and so forth, and so make your voices heard so that you can be a part of the byway if this is something that you support.
I would also mention that if there are questions that any municipality has, and, DOT can answer them, we can answer them, we can go in and we can share specific comments with regards to, what does this particular mean, whatever there is as a question. We have those dialogues all the time. So that's where, what we want to do is, to the point of reducing barriers to getting over the finish line. So.
Done. Okay, and so the byway designation timeline. Right now, again, we're in public feedback on the CMP. August, we're submitting, September, December, we've talked about that, January, introducing the legislation, and then hosting celebrations along the byway in March. So once it passes at the state level, et cetera. So that is our goal.
Yeah, I'd like to just mention that, we talk about letters of support. The Department of Transportation does look favorably on making sure that, there is letters of support from different entities, individuals, residents, community groups, any nonprofit organization or those that, want to support designation. All of those are scanned and attached as appendices to the corridor management plan for submission to DOT. We also look for letters of participation. Those letters of participation are saying, I want to help afterwards, so that if you need a meeting space, or I'm going to organize an annual cleanup, or I'm going to adopt a highway, or whatever else it may be, that letter of participation shows that, if there's skin in the game, you're going to help support that along the way.
We have a slide here with the,
Yeah.
so sorry.
But there's also then a third letter that will, or request that we will have, as Danielle mentioned, getting the corridor management plan accepted and approved by the Department of Transportation is the first step to designation. Then it has to be introduced as a bill to the New York legislature. And at that point, we also turn back to all of those who have offered support for designation to also contact your local representatives and senators to say, we hope you will support this bill so it can go into law. And that is where, the byway becomes official. So that's really, even though we're talking about the corridor management plan, I don't want us to miss that important step also, because it has to pass that hurdle in order to become law. So at this point, though, I want to open the floor to any other questions you may have about either the corridor management plan, things that you really want to say, this is important to me for this reason. I want to make sure that that is included. Or I have a question about this. I tried to capture, even though I was having conversations with you, I tried to capture all of our earlier conversations. So if I haven't, please use your yellow card to have any further comments or things that we need to address. But I also want to open up the floor for any further conversation at this time. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I just want some clarification. Is this a long-term project, or are you looking for it to be like 10 years down the road, or looking for it? Do you have a time frame?
It is forever. I mean, byway, I've worked with several byways that were designated in the 80s. And you see them go through evolutions, but typically you have your first corridor management plan is 10 years long. And then you go back and you update your corridor management plan. You're not redesignating necessarily. You may add a spur, you may add, look at something else you want to do, but hopefully you've checked off a lot of the things that were in your corridor management plan. And then you're saying, so what do we want to do for the next level? Where do we want to push that to that next level? One of the things I will say is that, we're also very careful about capacity management in byways. So that looking at making sure that, sites that may not be able to accommodate, lots of people, that you can then say, well, maybe what we need to do is have things in shoulder season or off season. Byways are good for that because they don't necessarily, especially when they're history related, they don't necessarily have to be season dependent. So thinking about those strategies in a more developed way based on where that place is, but this is, 10 years is just the first chapter, I'll say.
Well, and one thing that I'd also like to clarify unless, in case that we didn't before, is that when most people think about, okay, well, DOT has a project in our community, it's either expanding something or some type of building of something. And this is not that. These are using already existing roads. And so, it won't be, unless they already have plans to do an expansion of 9. It's not that the byway then will, is requiring that you'll see trucks once designation happens or anything. So when you're thinking about this as a long-term project, it's not necessarily that, because sometimes when we did the first set of public meetings, people thought, okay, well, is this going to be something with eminent domain? It is not. Is this something to where people, you were going to, have traffic rerouted and everything for 5 years because, we had snowstorms and so forth, and it was a DOT building project or expansion or something. It is not. If that happens, it's not necessarily, unless there's so much traffic, but again, we'll have a traffic and safety plan. But these are the utilization of roads that are already here in your community. So it's not really any additional things. And I'm not sure if that's also part of your question, but yes.
Would it be accurate to say that the only physical part of it is gonna be signage? So that
Except
people know that there are ordinance around it?
Right.
physical, except for if the byway decides you want an eyebrow. If maybe you want a safe pull off somewhere for a kiosk. Or maybe you wanna have some kind of access that you don't have otherwise. But that is also something that is decided by the byway and submitted to DOT. And so it is not something that is done as a top down. So it's only if it's like, well, we need a place to be able to tell the story, but we need to have a safe place for people to pull off and be able to experience this. Maybe that's the reason. We see that a lot in the West, where they need to have a pull off, or if you're doing a birding trail, which, have done, you need to have a place where people can do that as a safe way. Which is why there is that traffic and safety plan to making sure that, there are intersections that you've got good signage that's going to give directional signage for people to be able to follow the byway and not be confused. So all of that is in concert with DOT.
Will the signage be uniform?
Yes,
Uniform.
and it already has an approved logo that has been ratified by the Descendants Council and has also been approved by DOT. And it is included in the
Corridor
management plan and the byway.
And so the type of the signage is.
It's standard byway physical we can share that.
Yeah, this size.
I was wondering who conducts the site specific research and to what extent that already exists, that sort of uncovers first citizens, like what's the there, and tells the story. Cause I can imagine about like whether that's conducted by students or scholars or people from universities or local historical societies or families, they would be very different, but like it's all good, but who's organizing that and interpreting that? I think if I'm understanding, interpretation is the step that's about how do we turn that into a story that could be on its side.
Right. There is gonna be a history and interpretation committee. There is also, though, a lot of it will have to pass through the Descendants Council as well for ratification and approval. So there is a process that is included in the corridor management plan about how that is conducted. It's also that we have a number of scholars who have done research already, and so it is looking at what's currently available. And also then working with county historians and others to make sure that, it goes through the right process. Anyone else?
That'll work question.
So I'm gonna make another comment.
Yes.
So if you're connected to any organizations or groups, it can be a book club. That can also give a letter of support for the five department institution. You have a business. All of those different connections matter in terms of support for the five. So think about that as well. And then also moving forward, thinking about the sense of ownership is Byway in your area. If they look different than Buffalo or Niagara Falls or Auburn. You know, you have different cultural assets here that may look a little bit different in other locations, so think outside the box. In terms of how you can magnify and amplify this experience, but we can travel in this area. A few months ago, a few of us in conjunction with the Assemblywoman Stephanie Zinnerman out of Brooklyn, we did a legacy bus tour. It was a 4-day bus tour that we traveled loosely along the byway from New York City all the way across the state of New York, St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, and we finished in Niagara Falls. And that gave us some experience of how it would actually travel that route by bus. But it's also intermodal, which means you're gonna have people who wanna bike that route. In the next couple of weeks, one of our colleagues out of Philadelphia, Ken Johnston, is a walking artist, and he walks. He walked from Texas into Mexico a few months ago, and he's gonna be doing another walk, 15-day walk from Niagara Falls, New York, up to Owen Sound, Canada. So he has that vision in terms of utilizing this route in that capacity. So, you know, think outside of the box in terms of how this can be an experience that can be amplified for people that are going to travel to these areas to learn about the stories that have happened here, and then stories that have yet to be uncovered. So,
Not that important gets to say, but funding wise, like phase 2, phase 3 going forward. You anticipate that coming off in grants, is there other sources? Do that coming through?
So there is a funding plan that's part of the corridor management plan. They actually have to identify funding resources. And so one of the things we've learned is that grants are great, but you need to look at earned income and other kinds of fundraising strategies. So we have put together some recommendations on how that can actually work. And who are potential partners in that funding process. So, because that is something that has to be articulated.
And one of the things that we've also found too is that upon designation, it opens up a lot of doors, right? For that. So again, when we were talking about the purpose of having a corridor management plan, it opens up those doors, and upon designation, then there can be like federal funds and so forth, that it opens up a different avenue for obtaining financial resources. So, but again, achieving designation is the first goal.
Yeah, state byways are eligible for federal highway funds that are allocated for scenic byways. So, but many times, one of the approaches that a byway will use, especially if it's multi-jurisdictional, meaning more than one county or, you know, long routes, is that they will actually go for big grants or private foundations that can fund something and then actually apply those funding at the local jurisdictions to help in those overall arching programs. So it may be a program or some kind of marketing or some kind of kiosk development or whatever it may be, and it's then at different locations. So they become the overarching organization that then applies that in local areas.
Yes. And additionally, kind of what Saladin touched on, you may know or be a member of an organization that has different funding. As we know, when we're talking about whether it's nonprofits, or every dollar helps. And so if you were a member of a civic organization and they have a particular program that may go towards this, some religious organizations, there are lots of different things out there that we can't possibly know every single one. But that's where we're inviting you to comment, to say, hey, this is something that I'm a part of. I can take this to this particular group. for an example, I'm not saying that this is one, if you are like the National Association of Civil Engineers or something, maybe it could be any one of those types of things. That if you know of something, then say something. Let the Byway organization and let us know, comment on the CMP. So this is where, again, the coming together into the communities to say, this is your byway. And so helping us to put all those various things either in the CMP or upon designation, having it to be in perpetuity to where it'll be here for for your children and their children.
I wanna also mention one thing about a corridor management plan. The corridor management plan, as Danielle said, is a roadmap. But it also allows you then to say, well, it's in our corridor management plan, so we can go for funding for it, because especially like any kind of comp plan, it has to be in a plan first. But this corridor management plan also is not restricted to only what's in there. There is the framework to say that committees will come up with an annual work plan, so it may adjust, it may say, well, we want to take advantage of the fact that Rev War is happening next year. Is there something we want to do with a particular theme or something that's happening? So it's not restricted only to what's in the corridor management plan. It is actually a roadmap to help articulate the opportunities and then provide a forum for those conversations to happen and be able to, as an idea percolates in a community, that can then be considered in saying, hey, let's do it for the byway. So that also is where we're trying to make sure that it's flexible enough to give opportunity, take advantage of opportunities, but enough guidance so that it stays true to the intent and purpose and all contributing to the vision.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. So requested assistance, how can you help? By July 23rd, read and comment on the corridor management plan. If you have a particular area of expertise, and if you are a tourism person, we're asking you to look at it more closely in the tourism area. If you are a stewardship person, then we're asking you to look in your wheelhouse to say, but still provide comment on it. Provide letters of support for the byway to include in the corridor management plan for when we submit it to DOT. As Cheryl said, we scan all of those. So the more that we have, the more that we can show that the community is for this, then the more they are going to be willing to say, hey, this is something that we need to move forward with and approve. Commit to participation after the byway is designated. Again, we've talked about participating and having skin in the game and saying, okay, I'm volunteering to do this, or we will help to fundraise this. As far as the support, when we have the description of the letter of participation, we have a letter of participation that you can download on the website. So, and then for round two, because again, we talked about not everyone has ratified it yet. Contact your local leaders if your byway community hasn't passed the resolution of support yet. And then to review and give input by July 7th, or starting July 7th is when we're gonna post it, and then you'll have 2 weeks to comment on it, and by July 23rd. And then to view the public meeting questions that were from some of the other regions that we visited, as well as any project updates with the countdown, as well as we have an economic impact data sheet, a one-pager for you to take to your local leaders and say, hey, this is the documented economic impact that we've seen from byways similar in length and in historic scope. And so we have that all in the website. And then once you download any of those, you can send them to Sage. So after this, we will gather all of the comments and include them in. And once we have posted everything, you will receive an email. So please look out for the email saying that it has been posted, and you will also receive this this presentation. Okay, because I saw that many of you were taking photos, and then you can release some of the memory on your camera, because you'll have the presentation. Okay, Are there any, yes,
Could we have, the Tarrytown have the, or we post the presentation on our website?
sure. So any other questions, comments? Or anything? No? Okay,
Thank you for doing this.
thank you. Thank you. Oh, one last thing, and my sincerest apologies while everyone is getting ready to go. Please, if you have not signed the sign-in sheet, we have to document this for DOT. So please sign in if you have not, came in a little bit later, then please make sure that you sign this. Thank you.